Howdy, everyone. You can see that I now have all of the forward fuselage structure removed. Of course, the instrument panel has also been removed. I've got everything cleaned up really nice in here now from the match drilling and different things that I had done. So this is all clean. My original plan was to go ahead and work on that structure. Now that it's off, I was going to go ahead and deburr and edge finish and all of that stuff and potentially cleco it back in place. However, before doing that, I wanted to wrap up a few loose ends. So the first thing that I did was I took the high pressure lines off of the brake master cylinders, and I added my aluminum conical seals to both ends. So both lines at the master cylinder and both lines down at the firewall, they now have the aluminum conical seals in place, and those lines are now tight. If I come around to the other side, I had also talked about potentially gathering these together loosely in some kind of a bundle, either two at a time or all four of them. But I have decided I am not going to do that. I'm just going to leave them loose like they are. If for some reason they interfere with when I get the structure back in and I am doing instrumentation and putting in my different boxes and avionics, if these are in the way, or if I'm running cables like from my throttle quadrant and they get in the way, I'll deal with them then. But for now, I'm just going to leave them like they are. You'll note that I've added some heavy duty tape on this angle piece right here, because both of these lines rub on the angle just a little bit. It's mostly for vibration. They really don't move when the rudder pedals move. But I don't like the fact of them kind of vibrating directly on the aluminum, so I put some heavy tape there just as a guard, if you will. And then I also did the same thing here. This return line lays on the rudder pedal crossbar, so I put another piece of heavy duty tape there just to give it something to rub on other than rubbing on the metal. So I had done that, and then I started thinking, well, there again, I'm going to change things up a little bit, because before, even temporarily, I don't want to put this top structure back on temporarily just yet until I get my center console put in. I still have, I have the floor unit that goes in here, and then I've got my boost pump that mounts to that, and then I've got the center console that mounts to that. I've got some wires for the boost pump to run. I've got lights on the center console. I need to run wires for those. I want to get that kind of stuff that takes place down inside. I want to get that taken care of before I come back to this top structure. The top structure needs to be in place to move on to the next step, which is the canopy frame. But like I said, before I get into all that, I want this lower lying hardware installed. So with that in mind, I've come back to this contraption here. This is that lower area, that lower panel I was just talking about. Of course, that's the boost pump assembly. I went ahead and got my wires in place. I made up my wires. I've got them in place. I've added to the bottom of it, I had put J-channel across the bottom to stiffen it up and to take the weight of the boost pump. And then I just added a little bit of rubber tubing onto the J-channel, because that now will rest directly on the floor skin of the forward fuselage. So those rubber pieces on the J-channel, those rest directly on the floor of the fuselage, and I didn't want the metal-to-metal contact, and I wanted a little bit of cushioning, so I added the black rubber. I've also decided to forego mounting my ELT. I had made this plate for the ELT to mount directly on top of the boost pump. I've decided not to do that. The biggest reason is because the fit between, if that is mounted on my boost pump, then my center console fits just fine, but there's some clearance issues potentially with some of the wiring that needs to take place in here off of the ELT. And the biggest thing is to replace the battery on that ELT. I would have to come in here and take that console out just to get to the battery. And that's not that big of a deal. I just have to take these 2 screws, these 2 screws, these 2 screws, these 2 screws. So 8 screws have to come out. These 2 panels would stay in place. The rest of the assembly would then slide out and up out of the way. And then I can change the battery. But I think now that's a lot of unnecessary wear and tear on this unit, pulling screws out and moving it out of the way just to replace the battery on this. Like I said, it does get tight inside here with this. I've got some lights that I want to put in here, and at least one light in the back will not completely go in all the way because it rubs on the ELT. I wasn't happy with it. Initially, I wanted it as far forward as I can get it, which I know is taboo for an ELT. You don't want it up front. But I wanted it up front for the weight, but now that I have my engine and I've decided on a propeller, that little bit of weight up front from the ELT is no longer a concern. So that's just a long-winded explanation saying that I'm no longer putting the ELT up here. So at this point, I've got this mounted, I've got the wires. I'm going to start wiring up this for the lights, and then I'll go ahead and mount that. I'll mount this assembly in at that point, I believe, and then I might be able to go ahead, run my fuel lines to the valve, install this unit, and then work on the fuel line that's going to go from here through the firewall. So that's kind of where I am now. Like I said, I want to take care of that low-lying stuff, this kind of low-lying stuff first before I go back to the higher framing that goes on the top of the fuselage in here. So a little deviation from the plans, but it needs to be done. I think now's the time to do it. So as I said, as I always say, let me work through it, and I'll take things as they come, and we'll see what gives.